Right. Assalamualaikum and very good morning. Welcome back to our online class. So for today, we're going to discuss about a new topic in inventory management. It's about the dependent inventory system. And in this topic, we will focus our focus discussion will be on the resource planning system, right? So do you remember that we already have knowledge about the aggregate production plan, which has been discussed in the production operation management courses, and in the aggregate production plan, we develop the aggregate production plan based on the forecast and the actual order from the customer. So in the aggregate production plan, the production was developed for the product family. Developed for the product family, and if the production plan is feasible, the next step is to develop the master production schedule. In the master production schedule, each of the specific product by company that produced by the company will be determined the what is the production rate based on the forecast and actual order. And after we develop the master production schedule, the next planning will be on the material requirement planning. In the material requirement planning, we assessing our capacity and our inventory. In our inventory, does our current inventory can support the production planning? Production planning that use item, component, and sub-assembly in the process. So the next level is to do the capacity requirement planning. The capacity requirement planning, all the resources in the organization will be assessed in terms of utilization of the machine, equipment, workers, and etc. And output from the material requirement planning will be the work orders or a purchase order. So the work order, we give information to the production department what product to be produced in what period of time. So in the if during the process there will be shortage of inventory, so the purchase order need to be done to support the production process. So that is the overall how do we do the planning for the production process in organization. So material requirement planning. What is the material requirement planning? Material requirement planning is the computerized inventory control production planning system. So in the material requirement planning, we using a computer system to control the inventory and to do the production planning, production schedule for organization. So by material requirement planning, only suitable for the certain characteristic which is dependent demand item. The item that will be included in the material requirement planning system must be have a dependent demand item, discrete demand item with a complex product process, and the type of the process will be a job shop or batch production, and it is more suitable for the production strategy with the assemble to order environment. Like we have discussed before about the dependent demand item, the dependent demand item have a direct impact to the from one item to related item. So this is very useful for the material requirement planning to ensure the inventory control will be more efficiently to be controlled. And for the discrete demand item, under the material requirement planning, we need an item that have a not have a continuous demand. Do not have a continuous demand. So the discrete demand item normally have in the inventory such as component part. But for the continuous demand item, normally refer to the finished good item in the organization. And also for the MRP system, it is very suitable to have MRP system if the organization have a complex product process. So, and it will be more difficult if a company have a complex product process and do the production planning without support of computerized system. So MRP system very helpful for the company that have a complex product process. The job shop production or also known as a batch production process is really need a material requirement planning in assessing to determine the process which item that need in the process and which part or sub assembly that sufficient item in the production process. So this is the demand characteristic, the continuous demand and the discrete demand, the comparison between the continuous demand and discrete demand. The continuous demand normally apply for the finished product and have a characteristic of independent demand. For the component or part like tabletop here and table legs here, the component for the table. So all of these items considered as a dependent demand. So for example, if we need to produce one table, so we need one tabletop and we need 4 table leg. So if there is increase in demand of tabletop, let's say 100 unit of tabletop, so we need a tabletop of 100 and 400 table legs to have a complete of table. So this component have a characteristic of discrete demand. So sometimes there will be a demand from the production process of table leg, and sometimes there is no demand for the specific tablet for the to produce the table. So material requirement planning. In order to develop the material requirement planning, we need three component of input. Three component of input, which is master production schedule, item master file, and product structure file. So these three component is very important. The product structure file provide the information about the relation between item and component of sub-assembly as a complete of finished good, finished product. In the master production schedule, provide the information about the requirement of production rate for each of the specific model or product in the organization. So in the item master file, provide information about the status of inventory, inventory policy of the item. So all the information about the item will be stored in the item master file. So the output from the material requirement planning will be released whether you as a work orders, purchase order, or rescheduling notice. If there is a sufficient inventory to support the material requirement planning, the system will produce a work orders. And if there is shortage of inventory, the material requirement planning will release a purchase order, whether to the external supplier or internal supplier. And if there is new information from the customer orders or adjustment in the capacity, the plan order release will provide information about the rescheduling notice, which is mean that the management should do the modification on the material requirement planning to match or to ensure the production process can be produced based on the customer orders and based on the available capacity. So this is the summary of the MRP input and the output. Input is master production schedule, product structure file, and item master file. And for the output is the plan order release, whether we have work orders, purchase orders, or rescheduling notice. In the master production schedule is the drive from the MRP process with a schedule of finished product. So information in the master production schedule is about the quantity that need to be produced. Quantity that need to be produced by production floor. So quantities in the master production schedule represent production, not the demand. Why? Because information, the input when we developing the master production schedule is based not only actual demand from customer, but also combination of the forecast. So quantities represent production but not demand. Quantities may consist of combination of customer orders and demand forecast. The quantities represent what needs to be produced, not what can be produced. So it's stressed here that the production process must allocate a sufficient capacity to ensure that the production planning, the quantities that need to be produced is according what has been mentioned in the master production schedule. Quantity represent an item that may or may not be finished product. So master production schedule, although we consider the quantities in the master production schedule is the product, but not necessarily is a finished product. For example, a manufacturer of tires, the product for the company is tires, but for the automotive industry, the tires will be component to be assembled to a car. And also, some of organization have a what we call a phantom bill. So this item will not store in the storeroom, but only exist during the production process. So the quantities here may represent or may not be a finished product. So this is example of master production schedule, and we have here a product of pencil case, clipboard, lapboard, and lap desk. So the quantity shows in this table represent the combination of the forecast and customer order for each of the period. So for the pencil case here, for example, in the period 1, we have 125 also in the period 2, 3, 4, and 5. And for example, for the lap board, we have 75 unit for the period 1, 120 unit in the period 2, and 47 unit in period 3, 20 unit in period 4, and 70 unit in period 5. So this quantity in the each of the period have sometimes have the fluctuation of the production rate from they have up and down, and sometimes there will be no production process for the certain product. For example, here we have a lap desk. There are no production for the lap desk in the period 1, 3, and 5, but have a production process in the period 2 and 4. So although there are no production process in period 1, period 3, and 5, but the lap desk have a production process in the period 2 and 4. So we can assume that the finished goods here, the finished product here, have a continuous demand. But for the component that used to that used in the production process, in the assemble process to produce the lap desk, have a characteristic of discrete demand. So in the product structure file, based on the product structure file, the master production schedule will be based on the strategy of production process. For example, here, if the company using a make to stock strategy for their production strategy process, so the master schedule will be on the finished product. So information here, the master production schedule will be for the finished product. And for the assemble to order, if the company using assemble to order production strategy, the master production schedule will be a major sub-assembly or module. Will be a major sub-assembly or module. And for the make to order strategy, the master production schedule will be on component or material. So for the assemble to order, the MPS item here will be named as a sub-assembly, major sub-assembly process, not a finished goods. So, so our discussion in the MRP system today will be focused on the production strategy of make to stock, where the master production schedule have information about the forecast with the combination of customer order to plan the production process. So let's say we have a product structure for the clipboard, and there are a number of components need to complete a product of clipboard. We have a fresh board, we have top clip, we have pivot, we have bottom clip, and we have one spring, and we have two rivet. So in the product structure 3, it will show the relationship between the item and component as a complete of product, clipboard product. So here we have, in order to produce one clipboard, we need a 1 unit of fresh board and 1 unit of clip assembly and 2 unit of rivet. And for the clip assembly, 1 unit of clip assembly, we need 1 unit of top clip, 1 unit of bottom clip, and 1 unit of pivot, and 1 unit of spring. So this is an example of product structure 3 for the clipboard. And for the in the product structure 3 also, we have a bill of material that present the relationship in the table. So we have a same as the product structure 3, clipboard, clip assembly, top clip, bottom clip, pivot, spring, and rivet. And here we have information about the level. So clipboard with the 0 level mean that clipboard is a parent component, and the other levels 1 and 2 levels will be considered as a child component, which is item or sub-assembly component needed to produce a finished good. So bill of material have different type of bill of material. We have Phantom bills, we have K bills, and we have modular bills. For the Phantom bills, this is a transient sub-assembly, and this component will be never stored in the stock room. It will be immediately consumed in the next stage of the production process. For the KBs, is applied for the a group of small item, the loose part and the pseudo item number, and the purpose of using the K-bill is to reduce the paperwork, processing time, and the file space for the management of the item. And for the modular bill, the product we assemble from major sub-assembly and customer option. In the modular bill, we have information for each of the major sub-assembly, which simplify the forecasting and the planning. We have example here, the modular bill for the X10 automobile. Yeah, we have engine. We have three options of engine: 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, and 8-cylinder. So during the production process, we can only choose one of the component: engine, exterior color, interior color, and body. So this will provide variety of product with different specification. So time-based bill show assembly chart that against a time scale. So time-based bill provide information about the forward scheduling and backward scheduling. So for the forward scheduling, they assume that if we start at today's date and the schedule forward to determine the earliest date the job can be finished. And if each item takes one period to complete, the clipboard can be finished in 3 periods. But for the backward scheduling, we assume that if we start at due date and schedule backward to determine when to begin works. So backward scheduling provide information what is the latest the production process to begin. And if an order for the clipboard is due by period 3, we should start production now. So backward scheduling provide information the latest date to be start for the certain item. Item master file provide the information about the inventory policy, description of the item, inventory status, about the usage and sale for the item, and also the identification of the item. So to summarize the MRP process here, we have exploring the bill of material, netting out the inventory, and determine the quantities using the lot sizing technique in the MRP system, and follow the time pacing requirement provided by the item master file. For example, here we have a MRP table here. The gross requirement is about the information that we derive from the MPS or plan order release of the parent item. And for the schedule receipt is about the on order or schedule to be received. So for the projected on hand inventory is about the current status of inventory. For the net requirement is gross requirement net of inventory and schedule receipt. The plan order receipt provide the information about the quantities that need to be received in which period, and plan order release is about the order that need to be placed to ensure that company have or production floor have sufficient inventory. Example here, we have a master production schedule about the clipboard and lab desk. And from the item master file, the item master file provide information about the on-hand inventory, provide the information about the schedule receipt, lot sizing technique that used in the MR for the clipboard and lab desk, and lead time for the clipboard, lab desk, and press board here. So we need to understand the relationship between item and component for the finished product of clipboard and lab desk. So here we have a product structure tree for the clipboard and lab desk. For the clipboard, we need 1 unit of press board and 1 unit of clip assembly and 2 unit of rivets. And for the lab desk, also require a press board, but the usage for the press board is 2 unit, and we need a trim, 3 unit for the lab desk, beam back 1 unit, and glue 4 hooks. So for the first step, okay, let's say we're going to develop a MRP table here. MRP table here. So we have item. We need to put information about the what is the item. Item is clipboard, and the level for the item is 0. And lot sizing technique we use for the clipboard is lot for lot, and the lead time here we have 1 period. So where do we get all this information? We get this information from the item master file that provide in the previous slide here. We have item master file here. We have information about the on-hand inventory. We have about information about the schedule receipt. We have about the lot sizing technique and the lead time. So the next step is to key in the input about the gross requirement, schedule receipt, and projected on-hand inventory. The gross requirement we can find from the master production schedule. Master production schedule for the clipboard, we have 85 unit in period 1, 95 unit in period 2, 120 unit in period 3, and 100 unit for period 4 and 5. So we put all the information from the master production schedule into the gross requirement of MRP table here, and also we key in the input about the schedule receipt of 175 unit in period 1. So based on this item master file, we have a schedule receipt of 175 unit in period 1. So information must be aligned with the item provided in the master production schedule and item master file. So this is the first step that we need to key in the input into the MRP table. So the next process is to determine the requirement of inventory in period 1. So for the period 1, we have 85 unit of gross requirement, and total inventory that we have is 200 unit. How do we get 200 unit? The schedule receipt 175 unit plus with the projected on hand inventory. So here we have 200 unit inventory total for the period 1. But in the period 1, we only need a gross requirement or the production quantity of 85 unit. So at the end of the period 1, there will be a balance of inventory at 100. How much? 100. Sorry. 115, right? So we have 115 at the end of period 1. And if our inventory is sufficient to support the gross requirement in period 1, the net requirement here will be 0. So we already finished the planning of the material for the period 1. So next, we be on the period 2. The gross requirement in period 2 is 95, and we have inventory on hand at 115 here, and there is no schedule receipt in the period 2. So we only depend on the projected on hand inventory to support the production process of 95 unit. So at the end of the period 2, the balance of inventory we have here is 20 unit. Since the projected on hand inventory is sufficient to support the gross requirement of 95 unit, so the net requirement here will be also 0 here. And in the period 3, we have gross requirement of 120 unit, and the projected on hand inventory is 20 unit. So it shows that the current inventory level is not sufficient to support the gross requirement in period 3 with the 120 unit. So we mark here in the net requirement as 100 unit, means that we need more 100 unit of item to support the gross requirement of 120. So 120 minus by 20, so the net requirement will be 100. When there is a net requirement, when there is information or quantity in the net requirement, we need to determine the planned order receipt quantity here. Determine the planned order receipt quantity here. In order to determine the planned order receipt for the period 3, we must follow the inventory policy of lot sizing technique that we have here for the clipboard. For the lot sizing technique we using for the clipboard here is lot for lot. So lot for lot, the quantity for the lot for lot must be equal to the net requirement. So let's say here we have net requirement of 100 unit. So the quantity planned order received in the period 3 also will be 100 unit. After we fill in the planned order receipt of 100 unit in period 3, we also need to determine when the planned order will be released. When the planned order will be released. So when the order will be released, we need to refer to the lead time that we have in the item master file. The lead time for the clipboard here is 1 period. So means that we need to backward 1 period here, which is in the period 2. So the 100 unit will be, the order release will be in the period 2 with the quantity of 100 unit. So what happened in the period 3? We released the order of 100 unit in period 2 and we will receive the 100 unit in the period 3 to support the net requirement of 100 unit in period 3. So at the end of the period 3, the projected on hand inventory will be 0. So 100 plus 20 unit here minus by 120, we have nil. Yeah. So for the period 4, since we have no inventory at the end of period 3, so the net requirement for the period 4 also will be 100. Will be 100. So to determine the planned order receipt quantity in the period 4, again, we need to determine based on the lot sizing technique applied for the clipboard, lot for lot. So lot for lot, we have 100 unit here. And when to release the order, look at the lead time for the clipboard here, 1 period. So we backward to the period 3 and we have 100 unit of planned order release in the period 3 that will be received in the period 4 of 100 unit. So we using the order receipt of 100 unit to support the gross requirement in period 4 of 100 unit. So at the end of the period 4 also will be nil for inventory. And in the period 5, the same process. The same process we do for the period 2, 3, and 4. So the net requirement here will be 1 will be 100 and the plan order receipt here also will be 100 and the plan order release 100 unit we backward 1 period of lead time, so will be in 100 unit in period 4. So at the end of the period 5 also will be 0. So that is the how do we do the RP planning for the clipboard by using the lot sizing technique, lot for lot, with the lead time of 1 period. So let we see the next example. We have here a clipboard, and clipboard also using a lot sizing technique or lot for lot. Sorry, no, this one is okay. Okay, let's say So this is example of MRP for the lab desk. Example of MRP for the lab desk. Okay. MRP for the lab desk. We need to key in input about the item, lab desk, lot sizing technique used for the lab desk is multiple 50 unit and with the lead time of 1 unit. And the gross requirement for the lab desk is 60 unit in the period 2, 60 unit in period 4, and have on hand inventory of 20 unit. So all of this information can be found in the master production schedule. We have lab desk here, master production schedule for the lab desk, 60 unit in the period 2 and 60 unit in period 4. And also information about lab desk, we have on-hand inventory of 20 unit, lot sizing technique is multiple 50 unit, and the lead time is 1 period. So based on this basic information, we assist us to develop the MRP table. So for the period 1, there is no gross requirement. So we maintain the inventory level at 20 unit at the end of period 1, but there is gross requirement of 60 unit in the period 2, and the projected on hand inventory that we have at the end of period 1 only 20 unit. So there will be a net requirement of 40 unit. So we need more item of lab desk of 40 unit to support the gross requirement in period 2 of 60 unit. So in period 2, we need to decide the quantity to be received in the period 2. So same process, we need to refer to what is lot sizing technique applied for the lab desk. For the lab desk, we using multiple 50 unit. So the order must be in multiple quantity of 50 unit. Let's say for the net requirement of 40 unit, so the multiple quantity of 50 unit will be 50 unit for the plan order received in the period 2. And let's say if the net requirement here is 60 unit, so the plan order receipt quantity for the period 2 must be double. So here will be 100 unit, must be double of 50 unit. So here will be 100 unit. Okay. So we have here for 50 unit. The plan order release with the lead time of 1 period. So we backward 1 period here. We have 50 unit will be released in the period 1 and will be received in the period 2 of 50 unit. So currently for the period 2, we have inventory level at 70 unit, where the 50 unit of plan order received plus with the projected on hand inventory at the end of period 1, 20 unit. So we have 70 unit. And the gross requirement only at 60 unit. So we have balance of inventory at the end of period 2 of 10 unit. So in the period 3, there will be no gross requirement. So we maintain our inventory at 10 unit at the end to the period 3. And for the period 4, we have 60 unit. So our inventory level is not sufficient to support the gross requirement, and there will be a net requirement of 50 unit. So the net requirement is matched with the lot sizing technique of multiple 50 unit. So the order received here may be 50 unit will be received in the period 4, and the order release will be in period 3. We backward based on the lead time for the lab desk, 1 period. So we backward 1 period. Here we have 50 unit. So for the period 4, we have inventory on hand plus with the planned order receipt of 50 unit, we have 60 unit minus by the gross requirement of 60 unit. So at the end of the period 4 also will be yeah. And also there will be no gross requirement. So inventory here also will be okay. So we finish developing the MRP table for the clipboard and lab desk. The next level is to develop the MRP table for the item fresh board. For the item fresh board. We understand that based on the product structure 3, the item of fresh board is needed for the product of clipboard and lab desk. The usage for the usage of fresh board for the clipboard is 1 unit, and the usage of fresh board for the lab desk is 2 unit. So therefore, in developing the fresh board MRP table, we need to combine the planned order release in the clipboard and lab desk MRP table. So we have here so we key in the input about the item fresh board, and lot sizing technique we use is minimum 100 unit. So each time we make an order for the fresh board, we must ensure that a minimum order quantity of 100 unit, and the lead time for the fresh board is 1 period, and the projected on hand inventory is 150. All of this information you can get from the item master file here for the fresh board. Okay, fresh board, we have inventory on hand 150 unit, and the lot sizing technique is minimum 100 unit, and the lead time is 1 period. So to determine the gross requirement quantity for the item fresh board, we need to combine the information of planned order release from the clipboard and lab desk. We need to combine the information of planned order release for the clipboard and lab desk. So here we have the plan order release for the clipboard is 100 unit in period 2, 100 unit in period 3, and 100 unit also in period 4. But for the meanwhile for the lab desk, we have 50 unit in period 1 and 50 unit in period 3. So the gross requirement for the first period of fresh board, we transferring the input from the plan order release of 50 unit to the MRP table of fresh board. But we need to be careful and assessing the product structure tree of the clipboard and lab desk here. Okay. We have 1 unit usage of Freshboard for the clipboard and 2 unit usage of Freshboard for the lab desk. So for the first period of Freshboard, we have information of plan order release from the lab desk. So back to the product structure tree of lab desk here, we understand that lab desk use 2 unit of Freshboard. 2 unit of Freshboard. So we need to multiply with 2 unit to the plan order release in the lab desk. So here we have 50 unit multiplied with 2, so we have 100 unit. And in the period 2 of Freshboard, we have information of plan order release from the clipboard of 100 unit. So back to the product structure tree, the clipboard only use 1 unit of Freshboard. So the plan order release quantity here will be multiplied with 1. So 100 multiplied with 1. So we have quantity here 100 unit. Next, for the gross requirement of period 3, we have information from the MRP table of clipboard and lab desk here. So for the clipboard, we have 100 unit in period 3 and 50 unit in the period 3 also for the lab desk. But 50 unit here must multiply with the 2 unit usage of Freshboard. So we have here 200 plus with the 50 multiply 200 plus 50 multiply with 2. So we have here 200 plus 50 multiply with, not 200, 100 actually. 100 plus 50 multiply with 2. So total of gross requirement for Freshboard is 200. Okay, so we have total of 200. we have 200. So for the period 4, the gross requirement quantity is from the clipboard with the quantity of 100 unit multiply with 1. So we have here 100. And there is no planned order release from the lab desk. So we maintain at the gross requirement of 100. And for the period 5 here, there are no planned order release for both MRP table of clipboard and lab desk. So we maintain here with gross requirement for period 5. Okay. So the MRP material requirement planning for period 1 of Freshbot here, we have gross requirement of 100 unit and projected on-hand inventory of 150. So we have sufficient inventory to support the gross requirement. So we're using all the inventory that we have, and we have balance of inventory at 50 unit at the end of period 5. But for the gross requirement in period 2 of 100 unit, the projected on-hand inventory is we have a shortage of inventory in the period 2 because we only have 50 unit of projected on-hand inventory. Therefore, the net requirement here will be 50 unit, and we need to determine what is the quantity order received for the period 2. So the quantity order received here must be according to the lot sizing technique used or applied for the Freshbot. The Freshbot use a lot sizing technique with the minimum quantity of 100 unit. So the net requirement of 50 unit here is below minimum requirement of 100 unit. In order to determine the planned order receipt here, we must follow the lot sizing technique with 100 unit quantity minimum order. So we have here 100. And planned order release, we have lead time 1 period for the Freshbot. So we backward 1 period here. So we have 100 unit in period 1. So for the total inventory that we have in period 2 here, we have 100 planned order received plus projected on-hand inventory of 50 units. So we have 150 minus by gross requirement. So at the end of the period 2, we have 50 unit left in our stock room. So we have a 50 unit. For the period 3, we have gross requirement of 200 unit, and of course the net requirement will be 150, and the planned order receipt here will be 150 because the net requirement is bigger than the minimum requirement of 100. So we follow exactly the the quantities in the net requirement. So we put here 150. So 150 backward 1 period to determine the planned order release. Here we have 150 in period 2. So 150 plus 50 unit projected on hand inventory. So we have total inventory of 200 unit. At the end of the period 3, we renew inventory. So we have 0 inventory here. And for the period 4, we have 100 unit of gross requirement with the projected on with no inventory on hand, and the net requirement here will be 100, And also for the plan order received will be 100 match with the lot sizing technique of the minimal requirement of 100. Backward one period to determine the plan order release of 100 unit. So at the end of the period 4, we have nil inventory here, and we maintain our zero inventory here until the period of 5. So we finish develop the MRP table for the uh, clipboard and lab desk as a finished product, and also for the dashboard for the uh, item or component that used in both product of lab desk and clipboard. So that's all for our class today. Discussion on the MRP system. We will continue our discussion with the other technique of lot sizing technique to determine the order quantity. For example, here we have maximum order quantity, multiple order quantity, economic order quantity, periodic order quantity, and also we have a heuristic algorithm technique of lot sizing, uh, least square. There are EOQ. How do we apply EOQ model to determine the order size, lot sizing technique apply in the MRP system? So all of these lot sizing technique we will discuss on next coming class on uh, Thursday. So that's all. Any question about the MRP, developing the MRP table? Okay, thank you. Uh, that's all today. We finish our class. And for those that using a phone that cannot scan the attendance, I will come back the QR code. And for those that using a phone, you can add your name in the WhatsApp, so I can add manually as your attendant.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.